Honourable member for Prince George, Peace River, Northern Rockies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know it's a mouthful. It took me a while to get used to that name as well. So tonight we're debating C8 and I think another tax and spend bill by this Liberal government that doesn't seem to understand a lot of things. They don't seem to care about people's privacy. They don't seem to care about that there's record inflation in our country. And to hear the Deputy Prime Minister go on about, it's not a big deal, it's not us, and blame the world and blame COVID, that's their typical go-to, is blame COVID for everything. But it's far more than that. We have an out-of-control spending government that's, we're at $1.2 trillion in debt and it's growing. But of that, I think what a lot of Canadians may not know, and a big part of the reason why we have that inflation is, I'll take it to the Parliamentary Budget Officer's fiscal update. And so everybody'd presume out there, based on the Liberals, would be, it's all COVID spending, right? Well, the Parliamentary Budget Officer himself said $176.6 billion of the government expenditures from 2019 to 2027, so over the next 7 years, they plan to spend $541.9 billion. That's a mouthful too. That's a lot of money. Of that, $176.6 billion isn't even COVID related. So here we're having a time that we're being hit with inflation. Canadians are already being hit with massive increases in food prices, and I'll get into that in a minute. I'll give some good examples of that. And they're trying to say, look, it's all COVID. Meanwhile, they're padding a whole bunch of projects and doing a bunch of things that are completely unrelated. And, I just said I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, we have a Peace River Bridge in my neck of the woods that's the main artery on the Alaska Highway it's hugely at risk. It's been failing for the last 20 years. They have to repair it. They're welding on it almost nightly. It needs to be replaced, but we don't see any plans to replace such an important piece of infrastructure in this kind of spending, Mr. Speaker, sadly. But we see it going into a whole bunch of mysterious places. I guess we'll find out more about that after we understand what was spent in COVID. But I think what I should do is illustrate some of the costs, because we've even heard that 4.8% is the number for inflation, but it really is a deceptive number, because there's many more things that are a lot more than that, more than the 4.8%. And here's an article from CTV, pretty recent article, and it says the biggest single increase was gasoline, rising at 38.4% over July of 2020. 1 year, Mr. Speaker, it's gone up by 38.4%. And it wasn't only double-digit increase that Canadian consumers faced either. I'll go on. There's always a lot of moving parts in the electricity market, said Rob Roach, Deputy Chief Economist at ATB Financial. But there certainly has been a lot of demand over the summer, and that just naturally pushes up the prices. So even electricity, Mr. Speaker, and this is in a day and an age where we want electrification to happen, electric cars and all the rest. I'll go on. Electricity is up 21.1%, with natural gas up 30.9%. And he goes on to say the hot summer has been at least a partial driver of that increase, Roach said. So, Canadians, I've even seen that, I go buy the odd groceries and buy bread and different things like that. I've noticed quite a spike in prices. They've gone up quite dramatically. And I think there's a lot of Canadians across the country, and I have 4 adult children, a daughter that's just about to graduate, and this is hitting them broadside. They realize that by the end of the month, the money's run out. The normal money that would last, and they even have decent jobs. My daughter works at Dairy Queen. Normally it lasts, but it isn't lasting anymore. She has a vehicle she has to pay gas for and buys food the odd time. But I think this is what's catching a lot of Canadians off guard, is that why am I running out of money? But it comes down to a government that when they are spendthrift as they are, it drives up inflation and it makes that dollar last less than it used to. Another example of an increase food prices now. So Kendra Sahino, I sure hope I'm pronouncing that right. This is from a CBC article recently, from a month ago. A manager at the Fiesta Farms grocery store in Toronto says costs from suppliers are going up faster than she's ever seen. And this is while the minister across the way says, no big deal, folks, it's not us, right? we're seeing almost every, this is from Kendra, we're seeing almost every single supplier increasing their pricing, which then increases our pricing. She told CBC News in an interview. I've been here for 20 years, and I've never seen a jump like this, Mr. Speaker. So here you go. We're seeing record amounts of inflation. Our country is, I'd say our economy is at risk, and people ask me, Bob, I guess I should say, the member for Prince George Peace River, I don't know the proper way to do that, Mr. Speaker. But is there, are we beyond the point of no return? And I said, we have hope in Canada. But up in my neck of the woods, we develop our natural resources. We develop natural gas. A big part of the natural gas that's going to make it to the coast through a well-known pipeline that we all know of is coming from my riding. And we have oil, and we have forestry, and we have agriculture. We have so many things, mining. If we start actually appreciating the natural resource sector in this country and really start developing those resources and really foster trade like we used to do from 2011 to 2015 when I was here with the previous majority government. Let's hope we'll get there again. If we have the opportunity to develop those resources, the revenue comes with it. So all this, typical conservatives have to clean up all the liberal misspending over the past number of decades. We'll do it again, though, and it is possible. But to say, this Liberal government, to say that, look, we're not going to take credit for that is just wrong. And I'll quote another colleague of mine who is not in the, I guess I can't say that, the member for Carleton. I'll quote an article that he was quoted in the CBC article. The Conservative finance critic placed the blame for high inflation squarely at the foot of the federal government, noting that as a country with abundant energy and food resources, Canada should have a built-in advantage when it comes to keeping a lid on prices. And he's right. Internally, we should be doing fine, right? That's why to see a spike in natural gas prices, we produce this stuff. And we do it the best in the world. My colleague from Carleton, the biggest increases for consumer products have been on those that we source right here at home, not those that depend on foreign supply chains, he told reporters in Ottawa. Home price inflation is a homegrown problem, he went on, arguing that record government spending under this Prime Minister is to blame for inflation. Last quote, the more he spends, the more things cost. And that's the long and the short of it. Despite what the Deputy Prime Minister and the Prime Minister try and say, the credit completely lands in their lap about the inflation where we are right today as a country. This Prime Minister has been the Prime Minister for the last 6+ years. And if we keep continuing to have a Prime Minister like this, it seems to have no stops when it comes to spending, it becomes very concerning. Because I look at the future of our children. I mean, to double our national debt within the last, just under 8 years is very concerning. And one thing I'll finish with, Mr. Speaker, that's something that I talk about to my constituents a lot. The debt obligations already are $20 billion per year. That's just paying the debt obligations, so interest and the like, to service the national debt. Those obligations will double within the next 5 years. And that's going to be to $40 billion. And that seems to be a mystery. That it's a big number. How does that impact me, says the average Canadian? Well, how does the government get those bills paid? They tax you. So the concern that we all have, especially on this side of the House, is that, guess what? That credit card bill that this Prime Minister's racking up, the bill's going to all land in our mailboxes. And they're talking about things like home equity taxes and taxing the sale of your home now, and they'll deny it, but the CMHC, we had seen where it's actually being talked about. And one thing with Ottawa, usually when rumors are floating around, there's usually some truth to them. So my concern anyways is this government is out of control. They don't know how to control their spending, and again, we're seeing evidence, $176 billion that's un-COVID related. They can't just place it at the heels of COVID or in the lapse of COVID. But anyway, what I'm trying to get to, Mr. Speaker, we need a responsible government once again that manages their spending wisely, and that will be a future Conservative government. Thank you.